Imagine this. You're lying in bed, your body warm under a soft blanket, the blue glow of your phone dim against the shadows of your room. The world outside is chaotic, unpredictable, demanding, but here, in this small corner of familiarity, nothing asks anything of you. No risk, no rejection, no pain, only stillness, only ease. And yet, something inside you twists, a dull ache, a quiet shame, a voice you've silenced so often it now speaks in whispers. Is this really living? You scroll past another post, another story of someone doing something extraordinary, climbing mountains, starting revolutions, building lives that burn with fire and purpose. And as you double tap and move on, you feel it, that faint, flickering guilt. You could have been more, you know it, but you don't know how you ended up here, lulled into a trance of soft fabrics, streaming services, and pre-packaged convenience. You aren't suffering, not really, but you aren't alive either. You're surviving in velvet chains. This is the quiet prison of comfort. No alarms go off when you enter. There are no guards, no keys, no dramatic turning point, just one small decision at a time, choosing ease over effort, safety over growth, distraction over discomfort. Until one day, you look back and realize the best parts of you never had a chance to emerge. You were never forced to fight, to suffer, to overcome. You were never forged, only padded. And here's the paradox no one wants to talk about. The very thing you crave, comfort, is the very thing stealing your potential, slowly, invisibly, without violence, like a lullaby sung by a captor in silk gloves. So, ask yourself, when did you last do something that terrified you? When did you last break a sweat not because you had to, but because you wanted to? When did you last feel pain that changed you, that shook the bones of who you were and rearranged them into something stronger? Or has it all become too easy? We were not designed for constant comfort. Our ancestors bled to build fire, crossed oceans with nothing but stars to guide them, carved meaning from wilderness. And now, with everything at our fingertips, we've lost not only the hunger, but the muscles that hunger builds. Comfort has become the most seductive trap of modern life, disguised as progress, celebrated as luxury, sold to us as a birthright, but behind its soft surface lies a quiet erosion of the self, because the truth is brutal. Growth only happens in discomfort, meaning only emerges through struggle, and the person you dream of becoming lives on the other side of resistance. Yet still, we flee it, we drown in distraction, we medicate with entertainment, we choose numbing over becoming. And here lies the great contradiction. You want to feel alive, but you don't want to suffer. You want greatness, but not the growing pains. You want transformation, but in the warmth of your comfort zone. But fire doesn't bloom without fuel. Diamonds aren't born from pillows. And no one ever became extraordinary by staying warm, fed, and unchallenged. So the question that echoes now, perhaps the most important question of your life, is this. What has your comfort cost you? Not just in goals unmet, but in courage unfound, in wisdom unearned, in a self unlived. Beneath your calm surface, something ancient stirs. The part of you built to hunt, to fight, to dream dangerously. It hasn't died, it's only sleeping, numbed by ease, silenced by luxury. But if you dare to listen, to truly listen, you might hear it again. And if you do, if that buried flame begins to flicker once more, then the real journey begins. Because what you're about to realize is this. Comfort isn't your friend, it's your greatest threat. And the moment you see its true face, everything changes. Now let's pull back the curtain and ask the question no one dares to. Why do we fear discomfort so deeply? And what ancient truths have we forgotten in this war against pain? It starts early, before you can speak, before you can choose. A soft blanket is pulled over your restlessness. A screen is placed in your hands before your thoughts learn to stretch into questions. The moment discomfort stirs, something intervenes. A pacifier, a cartoon, a kind voice telling you not to cry. You're taught, without words, that pain must be silenced, that boredom must be filled, that stillness is dangerous. But what if that's the first betrayal? What if the discomfort you were told to avoid was never the enemy, but the doorway? Let's go deeper. Carl Jung once said, There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Yet modern life has built an entire architecture to bypass that pain. The very systems we live in, our education, our technology, our economies, are designed not to awaken us, but to anesthetize us. We are lulled into functionality, into pleasant distraction, into comfort. And slowly, without noticing, we lose the ability to face ourselves. At the root of this hidden problem is a psychological truth. The ego seeks stability. It clings to patterns, familiarity, predictability. The ego fears change, not because it's evil, but because it equates discomfort with danger. This was once a survival mechanism, primitive, useful. Pain meant threat, hunger meant urgency, discomfort meant risk. But in the modern world, those instincts are hijacked. Your brain still flinches at struggle as if a tiger were behind the next task, but the only predator now is within you. So when faced with a choice, write the book or scroll for another hour, face your trauma or binge another show, challenge your worldview or dive into dopamine, you choose the path of least resistance. Not because you're lazy, but because you've been conditioned to believe ease is the goal, but ease is not the goal. Growth is, meaning is, becoming is. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that life is essentially suffering and that the pursuit of comfort is a futile attempt to escape the very structure of reality. He saw human desire as a tormenting flame. We burn for what we do not have, and when we finally obtain it, we burn again for something new. Comfort, in his view, is an illusion, a fleeting pause in the endless cycle of craving. This sounds bleak, but there's a hidden liberation here. If life is suffering, and if that suffering is inescapable, then the question becomes not how do we eliminate pain, but how do we suffer meaningfully? How do we shape discomfort into transformation, instead of numbing it into decay? That's where the deeper problem lies. Modern society has pathologized discomfort. It medicalizes sadness. It brands restlessness as a condition. It packages pleasure into subscriptions, snacks, and screens. It promises happiness without struggle, self-esteem without effort, success without risk. And so we live in a culture of pseudo-growth, where self-improvement is an aesthetic, not a battle. Jean-Paul Sartre warned of this in another way. He believed freedom was a burden. Most people, he argued, do not want to be truly free because freedom demands responsibility. It means you must choose, you must suffer the consequences, you must carry the weight of your own becoming. But that is too heavy for most, so we retreat into bad faith, Sartre said, a life of excuses, roles, masks, conformity. We say we're just being realistic, we say we're too tired, we say we're waiting for the right moment. But underneath all that, fear. The fear of becoming who we could be. Because becoming is brutal. It asks everything of you. It strips away illusions. It invites rejection, failure, solitude. It demands you go where there is no map. And so we hide. In jobs we don't love. In relationships that sedate us. In habits that keep us sane. Not because we're weak, but because we've forgotten something ancient. That struggle is sacred. That the most essential parts of you, courage, purpose, resilience, are not found in safety. They are forged in friction. Nietzsche saw this with violent clarity. "What does not kill me makes me stronger," he wrote, not as an Instagram quote, but as a war cry. For Nietzsche, the ideal human was not the comfortable one, but the one who dances with chaos and returns with order, the one who creates values from suffering, the one who doesn't just endure hardship but transforms through it. That is the great reversal. Comfort preserves you, but does not evolve you. Discomfort wounds you, but births something greater. Still, we are terrified of discomfort. Why? Because it threatens the false self, the image we've built to survive in a world that rewards predictability. To face discomfort is to face the abyss, the unknown, the uncontrollable, the unwanted truths about who you are. Shadow work, as Jung described it, is precisely this confrontation. To dive into discomfort willingly, to meet your rage, your shame, your weakness, not to punish it, but to integrate it. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that darkness lives not in external suffering, but in the comforts that protect you from yourself. Because here's the bitter truth. Every time you avoid discomfort, you avoid the chance to meet a deeper part of you. You never learn how strong you are. You never discover your real values. You never develop the muscles of mind, soul, and spirit. And that's the most insidious part of comfort. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It wears you down in whispers. It robs you not of breath, but of fire. It numbs you not into sleep, but into a waking death. So now we face a question with teeth. If everything truly matters, purpose, growth, wisdom, lies on the other side of discomfort, then why do we run from it like it's a curse? Because we've been lied to. We've been told that the goal of life is to be happy, not whole, to be entertained, not awakened, to be safe, not sovereign. And this lie has shaped a generation of seekers who never dare to suffer for what they truly want. But suffering is not the enemy. Discomfort is not the enemy. The real enemy is the belief that you are fragile. You are not fragile. You were built to endure storms, to hold paradox, to die and be reborn again and again in the crucible of becoming. Your bones remember this. Your soul aches for this. But comfort has sedated that call. And until you feel the discomfort of not answering it, until the ache of staying small becomes greater than the fear of pain, you will remain caged by softness. But the moment you see this, truly see it, the spell begins to crack. You realize, comfort is not peace. It is paralysis. It is not kindness. It is captivity. It is not life. It is a lullaby sung by a world that profits from your silence. And you were not born for silence. You were born to roar. You don't notice it at first. Comfort doesn't come with sirens or bloodstains. It doesn't break down your door and drag you into ruin. It seeps in quietly, like a fog that rolls into your life at dusk and never leaves. It makes small things easier. Then it makes hard things avoidable. Then it makes meaningful things irrelevant. And one day, you wake up, not in pain, but in numbness. Not broken, but blunted, and that is far more dangerous. Pain at least screams for change. But numbness? Numbness teaches you to stop expecting anything from yourself, to stop reaching, to stop burning. It turns the fire in your chest into static in your veins. This is the first unseen consequence of comfort, the erosion of urgency. Urgency is not panic. It is not haste. It is a holy tension between who you are and who you could be. It is that deep electric sense that your life matters and time is slipping through your fingers. Comfort kills this urgency, slowly, silently, like a drug that makes you forget you were ever hungry. Your mind starts to rewrite itself. Neuroscience tells us that the brain is designed to conserve energy, to form habits, to seek out low-effort pathways. When your environment feeds you constant comfort, your neural wiring adapts. Dopamine stops being a reward for effort. It becomes a reward for ease, for clicking, for scrolling, for doing the least. This creates dopaminergic decay, where your pleasure systems are hijacked not by meaning, but by stimulation. Your biology begins to betray your soul. You start chasing novelty instead of depth. You start needing louder music, faster content, more sugar, more dopamine. But none of it satisfies, because you're feeding the craving without feeding the self. The second consequence unfolds here, the collapse of discipline. When life becomes too easy, your ability to delay gratification atrophies, and discipline is not just a trait, it's the very mechanism through which you transform. Without discipline, you can't finish the book, you can't build the body, you can't sit in the silence long enough to hear your real thoughts, you can't hold yourself together when the world begins to unravel, and the world will unravel. Life is not a perpetual autumn afternoon. Storms come, loss comes, crisis comes, but if you've lived in softness too long, you won't know how to stand. You'll break, or worse, you'll bend into whoever tells you what to do next. Comfort breeds fragility. We don't like to admit this. We like to think we're strong just because we know a lot. But knowledge is not strength. Comfort allows you to consume informations, and endlessly, but without the discipline to apply it, it's just noise. You may know the Stoics, you may quote Nietzsche, you may follow the productivity hacks and read the psychology blogs, but without discomfort to refine you, your wisdom stays untested, and untested wisdom is an illusion. There's a word for this state: learned helplessness. Psychologist Martin Seligman discovered that when animals are exposed to prolonged, uncontrollable ease or suffering, they begin to believe they have no power to change their circumstances, even when they can. They stop trying, they lie down, they surrender. Humans are no different. The more comfort removes your struggles, the more you begin to doubt your capacity to face anything at all. You become passive, apathetic. You look for someone else to rescue you. You stop seeing yourself as the main character. This is the third consequence, the death of agency. And agency is everything. Without it, you don't just lose your motivation, you lose your authorship, your sense that you are the one writing this story, that you have the right to steer the wheel of your life even if you crash. Instead, you outsource your life. You let institutions define your values. You let trends define your taste. You let likes and metrics define your worth. Because making your own meaning is painful. It requires facing the abyss. It requires staring into your own emptiness and building something from scratch. Comfort whispers, why bother? Just scroll, just relax, just numb. And so, meaning is replaced with entertainment. Identity is replaced with aesthetics. Growth is replaced with performance. And underneath it all, a quiet, haunting void. A void that no amount of comfort can fill. This is the deepest consequence of all, existential stagnation. You stop evolving, not physically, but metaphysically. The layers of your psyche meant to awake, and to stretch, to descend and rise again, they go dormant. You become trapped in a flat plane of existence. Days blur together, your passions dull, your questions dry up. You smile, you function, but inside, something ancient has gone still. You no longer dream like you used to. You no longer rebel like you used to. You no longer cry at beauty like you used to. You begin to exist as an echo, not a voice. And the worst part, you think this is normal. You think this gray, mechanical rhythm of ease and distraction is just how adult life works. You call it routine, you call it balance. But deep down, you know something's wrong. You see it in your eyes when the screen goes dark. You feel it in your chest when the noise stops. You hear it in the silence when comfort has nothing left to give. That moment, when the spell wears off, when the numbness wears thin, that is when something terrifying and beautiful can happen. You remember who you were before comfort took over, not the you that was polished and praised, but the raw, untamed self. The child who dreamed wildly, the adolescent who questioned everything, the inner rebel who felt destined for something greater. That self is still in you, but it is buried, under schedules, under consumption, under comfort. And until you dig, until you suffer, until you willingly face discomfort, not as a punishment but as a pilgrimage, you will never resurrect that self. You will drift, you will ache, you will wonder why nothing satisfies. But now you see. Comfort has consequences that no one talks about, not because they're invisible, but because they are so quiet, so socially accepted, so deeply woven into the fabric of our days that we forget to question them. But now you must. Because what follows next is the beginning of something rare, a rebellion. And the only way out is through the fire you've been avoiding. There comes a moment when the ache becomes louder than the lullaby, a moment when you realize that what you've called peace is actually paralysis, that your stability is a cage, that your life, though safe, feels eerily like a well-decorated tomb. And when that moment hits, if you're lucky, it doesn't just depress you, it enrages you. Because you understand, perhaps for the first time, that you've been robbed. Not by some tyrant, not by some cruel twist of fate, but by your own silence, by your own willingness to trade transformation for tranquility. And suddenly, you want out. This is the beginning of the rebellion. Not a rebellion against society, not against authority, but against the part of you that chose comfort over becoming. Now listen closely. This rebellion is not glamorous. It is not a highlight reel. There are no trophies for waking up in the middle of your life and choosing to start again. There is only fire. But this is where rebirth begins, in the fire of discomfort you once fled. You must choose to walk into it, eyes open, jaw clenched, not because you enjoy the pain, but because you've come to see it as holy. Let's talk about how. The first act of rebellion is simple and brutal. Do what you've been avoiding. Not to win, not to master it, but to wake yourself up. Pick the hardest, truest thing you've been putting off and start there. The conversation you've been avoiding. The work you've been too tired to begin. The truth you've been too scared to confront. Do it. Badly, if you must. Sloppily, awkwardly. Because rebellion isn't about perfection. It's about momentum. It's about breaking the ritual of avoidance that has calcified into your identity. Every time you do what you fear, your nervous system rewires, your sense of agency strengthens, your self-trust expands, and you remember, you were never weak, you were simply underused. Growth is not complicated, it is just uncomfortable. We think we need new philosophies, new books, new routines, but what we really need is to stop running from resistance. To stop needing every moment to be easy, convenient, enjoyable, to train ourselves again to endure the friction of becoming. This is what the Stoics understood. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, didn't glorify ease. He woke up each morning and reminded himself that life would bring difficulty and that this was not a curse, but a calling. He wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." That may sound cold, but buried in those words is freedom. Because if you stop resisting discomfort, if you accept it as the path, not the obstacle, then every hardship becomes a tool, every failure becomes a forge, every frustration becomes fuel, discomfort becomes your gym, and like a muscle, your mind begins to thicken, your will hardens, your emotions sharpen into weapons instead of wounds. The second act of rebellion is deeper. Withdraw from the narcotics of modern life, not forever, but long enough to feel what you've been numbing. We live in a world of anesthesia, screens, sugars, swipes. We are overfed and undernourished, overstimulated and underinspired. We have endless options for avoiding ourselves, so you must reclaim solitude, stillness, silence. Turn off the noise, not to be productive, not to biohack your morning, but to sit in the raw, awkward space where your real questions live, where your unresolved grief waits, where your truest desires still flicker. It is in this space, without distraction, that you will meet the part of you that comfort buried. You may hate what you find at first, but keep looking, because beneath the pain is potential, and beneath the fear is fire, and beneath the numbness is a self you haven't met yet. You must go there, even if it breaks you, especially if it breaks you. Nietzsche said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. But you will never find that chaos if you stay where everything is designed to keep you calm. You must go to the edge." The third act of rebellion is the most radical. Build your own meaning. Comfort tells you what to value. It hands you ready-made goals, wealth, ease, image, acceptance. But when you break free, you have to choose again, from nothing, with no one watching. This is terrifying, but it is also the birthplace of a sovereign life. Ask yourself, what pain am I willing to suffer for? What truth am I willing to lose friends for? What future am I willing to build slowly, through blood and friction? These questions will not give you peace, but they will give you purpose. And purpose, unlike comfort, never leaves you empty. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, said that the people who endured the camps were not the strongest, but those who had a reason, a why, something to suffer for. If you want to become indestructible, you don't need more pleasure. You need a reason to suffer. Comfort erases your reason. Rebellion forces you to find it again. Now here's the final secret, the one no one tells you. This rebellion is not a phase, it is a way of life. The moment you break free from comfort, you will be tempted to return. The world will offer you prizes, likes, applause, money, to step back into line, to put down your sword, to rest again. Don't. Because the moment you taste the thrill of discomfort, when you feel your spirit stretch, when you catch a glimpse of who you could be, you will realize no soft bed can compare to a soul on fire. No cheap pleasure can match the ecstasy of earning your own respect. No illusion of safety can replace the freedom of living with nothing held back. This is your birthright, not ease, not sedation, but the wild, sacred war of becoming. You must bleed for it. You must burn for it. You must choose it again and again, even when your hands shake. And when you do, when you commit to this rebellion, something ancient awakens. The warrior in you, the builder in you, the poet in you. The soul that remembers what it was like to run toward storms instead of away from them. So start today. One act of discomfort, one hard truth faced, one muscle built, not for aesthetics but for sovereignty. That is how you reclaim your potential. Not all at once, but moment by moment, fire by fire. Because in the end, the rebellion is not against comfort itself, it is against the smallness you settled for, and that is a war worth waging. There's something haunting about standing on the other side of the fire. Not because you're burned, but because you're changed. The world looks the same, but it isn't. You've touched something raw, something old, something so alive that it makes your old life, your comfortable life, feel like a slow suffocation you hadn't noticed until now. This is the final realization. Not a motivational slogan, not a clever insight, but a truth so elemental it cracks you open. The thing you feared the most was the only thing that could save you. Discomfort. It was never your enemy. It was your invitation. All along. It was the whisper in your bones when you stayed silent, the heat in your chest when you avoided the work, the guilt behind the dopamine, the sadness beneath the stillness, the tension that never left you because it was never meant to. You were supposed to grow, you were supposed to ache, you were supposed to suffer, not endlessly, but transformationally. And now, finally, you understand. Comfort wasn't just a trap, it was a betrayal of your design, your biology, your psyche, your soul. They were made to evolve, not to settle, not to stabilize, but to struggle forward, to become something more. You've always known this, you've felt it, that internal friction, the sense that you are bigger than your life allows. Not in an arrogant way, but in a deeply human way, a way that echoes through every spiritual and philosophical tradition worth anything. That who you are is not fixed, that yourself is not a destination, but a battleground. That you are being made every day, not by ease, but by fire. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the path toward wholeness. But wholeness, for Jung, wasn't peace. It wasn't comfort. It was the integration of opposites, light and shadow, good and evil, strength and vulnerability. It was the willingness to descend into your own depths and wrestle with the things you'd rather avoid. Only then could you rise. Wholeness isn't softness, it's sovereignty, and sovereignty is earned, not given. That's what most people miss. We think we can think our way to transformation, read our way there, visualize it, manifest it. But the soul doesn't respond to comfort, it responds to crucible. It needs stakes, pressure, time. It needs discomfort that is chosen, endured with eyes wide open. And the moment you see this, your entire worldview shifts. You stop asking, how can I avoid pain? And start asking, what pain is worthy of me? You stop chasing happiness and start chasing meaning, because happiness is a mood, but meaning is a direction, and it points toward the mountain, not the meadow. This realization unearths another truth, one you weren't ready to face until now. You have always had a choice, even in the numbness, even in the trance of comfort, even in your lowest moments. You were not helpless, you were simply unawake. But now you see the map clearly. On one side, the path of least resistance, soft, seductive, lined with dead dreams. On the other, the path of discomfort, steep, painful, lined with scars and self-respect. And now the question is simple. Which path will you walk? Because once you've tasted what discomfort gives you, clarity, power, presence, you realize something few people ever do. Discomfort is not the price of growth, it is the proof that you are growing. It becomes the compass, the friend, the sacred threshold. And from this place, this deeper self, you can finally look back at your old life without judgment, not with shame, but with reverence. Because you understand now, you were never weak, you were never broken, you were simply comfortable. Too comfortable to awaken, too comfortable to evolve. But not anymore. The veil has been lifted, and what you see is breathtaking. That every tear, every ache, every doubt was part of the alchemy. That every time you failed, you were forging something unseen. That every time you chose discomfort, you were becoming more real. Because here is the final truth, the one that unravels the myth of comfort forever. You are not here to be happy. You are here to become brave, to become whole, to become a force, to become the version of yourself that doesn't just survive, but transcends. And that version, that radiant, untamed self you've glimpsed in your quietest, most honest moments, they are waiting. But they are not waiting in the safety of your routine. They are waiting at the edge, where the cold wind howls, where the ground is unstable, where your excuses fall silent, where your comfort finally burns away, and all that's left is you, naked, raw, alive. And suddenly, for the first time, you understand the paradox that started all of this. Comfort was killing you, but discomfort? Discomfort is where you finally come alive. So take the step, not tomorrow, not when it feels right, now. Lean into the discomfort. Let it hurt, let it shake you, let it remake you. Because this trembling, terrifying step toward the unknown is the beginning of everything real, and you don't have time to wait anymore.